Okay, so on this next screen, taking those threats, then we asked, okay, so what are you planning to do in the next 12 months to deal with competitive issues out there? Majority of respondents said, well, we're going to be adding new social media features, or we're adding new products, and there might very well be some crossover there. And then right behind that was adding sales staff. And then sort of coupled in, below the 40% mark was modifying or overhauling the software platform. But really sort of leading off the plan of action is, okay, let's tackle social media by adding features to our site, or let's add new services. So I thought those were great responses, and they made a lot of sense to me. Now, on this next question that we're going to ask here, I guess I want to know what you're worried about, and I wished I could put a list of 30 things down that I think are potential problems out there, but GoToWebinar limits us to 5, so you'll just get to pick one of the 5 that we picked out here. So the first one would be social media replacing the need for job boards. The continued negative effect of the recession on the employment picture, job posting price commoditization, the competitors that you're seeing, competition that you're seeing from aggregators or search engines, or something else. What are you as a professional in the job board industry worried about at this point in time? Let's see what people have to say. Well, social media is leading off the pack here, and followed right behind by the recession. And then I think people are sort of tied up on the posting prices and the aggregator and search engine competition. But the social media replacing the need for job boards is in fact something that I hear about fairly frequently from clients and potential clients, and just people in general when I'm talking to them about the industry. So I think that's a reasonable fear. So moving forward, let's take a look at this next screen. And let's sort of sum up what, at least in my opinion, what's worth taking away from this survey data. And surveys are just pictures of information in time, and you can always pick a million holes into any survey. I know I certainly do, in terms of sample size and who was sampled and so on. But I think, the fact that I've conducted a number of these surveys over a period of time and seen some similar results should give you some comfort that a lot of this information is fairly accurate. I think the first takeaway is that anything you can do to improve your candidate quality is really important. It gives you a competitive advantage from an employer standpoint if you can reliably provide higher quality candidates than not only other job boards, but other methods like Twitter, like LinkedIn, like any recruitment method that someone might use. Now, that inevitably brings up the thorny question of what is candidate quality? How do you quantify that? It's a big pain, I can tell you that. But I can tell you that the way to find out is to survey your employers. Go to your employers and ask them, go to your clients and say, how do you define candidate quality? And if you ask enough of them, and you ask them in enough different ways, you should get some coherence in a few key areas, and those should give you good ideas on what you can do to improve your candidate quality. It might be something like using screening questions, providing that as an option. It might be some refinement in the marketing that you do to your job seekers, so that you find better job seekers to respond to your site. it might be some other sort of technological change in your system, or you know, it might simply be a training issue with your employers themselves. The next thing I think that's really important is that you survey your employers. Surveying doesn't have to be onerous. It doesn't have to be time-consuming. You know, I'm a big fan of SurveyMonkey. If you haven't used it, definitely give it a try. It's an easy way to survey people over the web. But it's really important to engage your employers and find out what they like and what they don't like about all of the recruitment methods that they use. And they may be using some recruitment methods you don't know about. And talking to them is the only way you're going to find out. But I think it's really important because you have to realize you are you know, as the job board for your employer, you know, you are a recruitment provider. You may be their primary recruitment provider. You want to stay that way. And you want to know what's working and not working, not only with your site, but with everything else that's out there. Now, I think the next thing is if you're not offering targeted emails to subgroups of your registered job seekers as a service for your employers, I think you should try it out. I think it's something, I know it's been successful for numerous job boards that I've surveyed and worked with, and it could be a great revenue stream and a great service for your employers. And finally, everyone's worried about social media. You know what? Who has a closer relationship with your employers than in terms of recruitment than you do? It's really your relationship to lose. And I think that for a job board, the logical next step is to become the social recruiting provider of choice for your employers. So basically, you're the one that helps them create and mold and use social media, and you make it easy for them. And social media is simply an extension of what you're currently doing with your job board website. And again, you know, talking to your employers, getting feedback from them, is, in my opinion, is always one of the best ways to stay ahead of the curve and not to get surprised. So that ends my formal presentation here. I hope there's been some good information here, some thoughts that you can take away, and I guess now would be a good time to open it up to any questions that you have.
Thank you, Jeff, for that information. And we have been receiving questions as we've gone through the presentation today. Some of them are a bit redundant, so I'm going to do my best to try and editorialize and combine some of these. But let me ask you the first question, and it probably comes as no surprise that it relates to social media. How are job board operators going to be implementing social media on their sites? Will it be through integration with companies like LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitter, or by building their own internal social media features?
Well, you know, in my opinion, it's probably counterproductive to try to build your own, and that's just purely from an adoption standpoint. I mean, remember who you're trying to engage here. These are job seekers. So the job seekers have already made decisions about what social media channels they want to use. To a large degree, they're using LinkedIn, although you know, that's very age dependent. You know, I recently, you know, if you watch the Recruit Fest presentation, you saw a bunch of very qualified young 20-something job seekers saying that they had no LinkedIn profiles, and you watched recruiters gasping and gnashing their teeth. But they were active on Facebook, they were active on Twitter. So trying to build your own independent social media platform for them to use, I think, is probably a waste of your time. I think instead, you know, the answer is to figure out, okay, find the channels that they're using and figure out how to make them work as seamlessly as possible with my site. And I think, yeah, I was just, and let me add one more thing. I think, you know, my former employer, Dice, launched something called the Talent Network. I think, you know, it's worth taking a look at that and seeing how they're approaching the, you know, approaching social media and how they're trying to integrate that into their site.
Okay. The next question gets back to the point regarding quality. And one of the points that you made, Jeff, that one of the biggest frustrations the job seekers have is the lack of response from employers. The question is, are job seekers blaming job boards for a lack of response from the employers? And really, as a job board, how do we respond to this?
That is $1 million question there. I guess the answer to the first question is yes. Job seekers do blame job boards for lack of response. I get tweets all the time, because of my Twitter handle, Job Board Doctor. I get tweets all the time from job seekers that are angry at job boards because they didn't get a response to their application for a job. And when I point out to the job seeker that, in fact, it's the employer that would respond rather than the job board, about half the time they say, "Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that." The other half of the time they say, "I don't care. The job board should be making that happen anyway." So you're not going to get any slack from the job seeker on that, unfortunately. So I think you have to tackle it in multiple ways. I mean, ultimately this is a problem that's never going to be solved. It's just sort of like the Middle East conflict of the job board world. The one of the things you can do is you can put tools in place for employers to make it easier for them to communicate. So traditional tools like autoresponders and reminders and those sorts of things that can be set up either by the employer or by your own internal staff when an employer comes on board, so that anytime someone applies for a job or gets sent up to the ATS, they get an automatic response from the employer. That's one way to do it. Another way to do that is to proactively go out to the job seeker audience and say, this is the situation, and in the form of training the job seeker basically on the job hunt, and say, okay, we're the conduit, we're the go-between. So when you don't get a response from an employer, these are the things that you can do, or these are the ways that you can follow up. And once again, trying to delineate the difference between the channel, which is the job board, and the employer. Interestingly enough, we're in a situation right now where I don't think LinkedIn or Twitter really has to worry about that, because it's all very transparent that there's not any in between there. When someone reaches out to someone on LinkedIn and they don't get a response, they don't blame LinkedIn, they blame the person that didn't respond to them. But I think over time those channels will probably run into some of the same issues. But I think tools, I think education, and I also think as much as possible working with the employers and stressing to them, you're going to get better quality employees, better quality candidates, and a higher return on your investment if you just do some basic response back.
Thank you.